Hello everybody to today's CodeLive. My name is René Winklermeyer and I'm super excited to talk to you about a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. That is code reusability. And you, as a developer, potentially stumbled upon that already when you developed with Lightning Web Components open source and you wondered how can you reuse components that you build across many projects? Because this is one of the big promises that web components solve for you eventually. Now, when you look on the screen, you see our Lightning Web Components recipes sample application. If you have not experienced that, you can just go to recipes lwc.dev and figure it out, experience it. And also you can go to GitHub over here and just see the source code, which is pretty cool because we as developers learn from code usually. Now, let's come to the code reusability aspect. This application has a couple of elements that I want to reuse across many different projects. For example, I have a simple card component here. I have a field, potentially somewhere also down here, a checkbox, and I want to reuse this, right? I mean, if I have another project, I just don't want to rebuild these components all the time, or of course, copy them over, right? I mean, no one did ever that, right? No one ever copied code from A to B just to reuse. So I want to walk with you through what it means to build a reusable component, on how to distribute that using npm, and then on how to consume that in other applications. And this is all possible because the Lightning Web Components team, and great shout out to all of you who are involved on building this amazing framework, is they added module resolution, this new capability, and again, we will walk through that. The first thing that I will do is I will go to my localhost environment and not to the actual running website, because then you can actually see what's going to happen when I change code. And talking about code, let's switch over to VS Code because code talks. What you see here is already my Lightning Web Components recipes open source sample application open. I've got the local server listening using LWC services. So, all the tooling is already in place. Now, when I drill down into my modules over here, you see I've already structured them into namespaces. Data, which hosts some data access, recipes, which host the actual recipes, and I already structured my UI components in a dedicated namespace for buttons, card, input fields, an output field, a select, and so forth. Why is it important? Well, first, it gives you clarity on how you would organize your modules, and B, it actually now helps me to extract this and to bring this over into a reusable package. So let me quickly show you an example for the UI button. There we go. And also want to close the terminal because that's a bit too much now. You can see here I have my UI button referenced, my other namespace for the recipes, just as you would develop regularly with your Lightning Web Components. Now, I want to get this out of here. I want to build a new application. I want to extract my pure UI components and then distribute that. Now, for the sake of brevity, I already prepared a bit for that. And what I want to do is actually now, I will copy over all these components. You see them in green because I already removed them from this project previously, but just a Git view. And I will copy these components just as they are over to another LWC OSS project. Pretty easy. Let me quickly switch. Same project structure, with the only difference, I have my UI namespace in here and there's nothing in there, which we will change in a bit. Okay, so simple action, right? UI and all my UI components. Let's quickly go back, and I want to delete them from my project over here because I don't have them. Now, something that you all will expect is once I'm going to reload my project, it may tell me that I can't resolve anything, right? UI, nav footer, any of those components, they're gone. So my project will be, I guess, when I do a refresh over here, pretty not workable because my server isn't running. Cool. That's actually what I want to achieve, right? I don't want my components in here. I want to have an actual running project. So let's quickly go back to our UI components project. And I did already a couple of things over here. I created a container component, which is basically my app, my outer app, where I can run my components in. And when I do a watch over here, I will get a new build process. That's fine. I click over here, and you can see I've already, for example, my label in here, right? So this is because my container app contains already my UI button. And when I just uncomment this, I'm gonna save, I'm going back to Chrome. You see already I have my card here, I have my field here, so all my different UI components. You can do that in a more fancy way, right? Just not build a container component and have everything in there. Some people use Storybook, for example, but that really depends on how you want to develop, right? I think it's mostly convenient, at least for me, to just have a container component and just drop basically in there all the UI components that I have. Now, there's one more thing, right? You want to now make this reusable. What are the preconditions? Well, there are a couple of preconditions that you have to fulfill. First of all, you will need a standard project, which is what we already have. And then, because you want to make this reusable, you will have to add a configuration. You can add this configuration into a dedicated LWC.config.json file on your project root, or what I personally prefer, I'm going to add some configurations directly in my package.json. And because I'm German, I love everything actually really well sorted, so I just use the alphabetical sort over here. So you'll need a new key in your package.json, and with that you will need a new modules key over here, right? So modules does a couple of things. First of all, you will have to tell within an array, and I will come later to that why that is, where your module folder lives. So in my case, it is source modules, that's it. So basically my root folder, okay? So it's a directory, and there are a couple of other options of like npm where we'll come to, and it's now in source modules. With this configuration, the LWC service resolve process knows where your components live, which is great. Now, I have also my container component in here, right? So this is a component that I may not want to expose to other developers. And actually, for that, there is a setting, or a key to be specific. So you will have to set another key, which is set expose. And within expose, you will define an array of all the components. And as a lazy developer, I have them already prepared over here. You have to define all the components that you want to expose. Because sometimes you will have utility components in there or things that are just an implementation detail, and you don't want to expose that. So without these two keys, it won't work. Okay, so UI button, card, input, nav footer, output, select, they are all here. That's great. With that, the LWC module resolution mechanism actually knows A, where to find your modules, and B, which ones you want to expose, because they're super important. Now, the next step will be to make this reusable via npm. So I'm not going to publish this directly to npm because I think I'm just not going to put package number 5325 on there just for testing purposes. So what I actually do is I'm a big fan of Vedacho. Vedacho is basically a local NPM server, which allows you to just play with publishing packages and that stuff, and you don't pollute actually your own NPM server or npm.js. So when I go here, you go there, and you can see already on localhost a couple of different projects that I work with. And then I'm going to publish my new package with this configuration on my local npm server. And for that, I'm just going, let's quickly add another shell over here. And I'm going just to say npm publish. And that's great. Oh, perfectly. I added something wrong. That's the big fun with live coding. There we go. That makes sense, right? Always check the problems. There we go. Okay, npm publish, live coding. That's why we do that. And you can see the publish was super fast because it's local. You see that my modules are all exported and part of the package. And when I go over to Chrome and I'm just doing a refresh, I already can see down here at Threaded Apps perfectly just published, and that's cool. Now, I want to reuse this. I want to use this now in my other project. So I'm going back to Visual Studio Code. I no longer need my utility project, which hosts all the UI components. So let's quickly go back over here to LWC recipes OSS. Now, there are now two things that I will have to do. First of all, I have to add this npm package to my project. Okay, so I'm just going to say yarn add and use npm, whatever you prefer. And this is a real long name, so bear with me. Traded apps, LWC recipes. UI components, potentially we should change that. And you just need that as a dev dependency. It's reaching out to my Vedacho server, installation, and done. Now, we're only partially done now, actually, because I just have this dependency in my local project, but still my project doesn't know that there are Lightning components included, which I want to reuse. So I have to add another configuration over here. Let's go back to package.json. And again, that can be just an lwc.config.json. Here we go, LWC, back because I'm German. And here's another thing that I have to add. I have also to add a modules folder. Now, this can be or should be again an array. And there's one thing which is now that you have to set. And you have to specify that you have modules in your local project which are an npm project. So let's go over here, and I'm this time lazy. I just copy over so that we don't have errors. There we go. See. At the comma so that I don't run into the same thing again. And this is everything I need actually, right? With this, I'm telling the module resolution mechanism that I have modules that are part of an npm package, and this is the name of the package. And as you can see, it's also scoped, would also work with non-scope packages and so forth. Now, let's try it. Then yarn watch. Give it a couple of seconds. No error. And I'm going back to Chrome, going back to localhost, which failed before. And you can see the same page with UI components that are part of other npm package, which is, I think, super simple and super exciting, because this allows you, enables you to build packages and reuse components across many different applications that you will build with LWC. Now, one last thing, because as developers, we are good developers. And because we are good developers, we also will test everything, right? We'll write just tests for all our UI stuff. So actually, let me try that. I'm running one of the predefined scripts, let's say YAML test unit, and let's see what's going on here. It take a couple of seconds because I didn't run the test as of today. And okay, there we go. What do you think? Will it fail? Will it resolve? I think it will fail, and it will fail a lot. So let's see what's going on. Oh, it can't find the UI card. Can't find the UI card, that's great, and it can't find UI output. So basically, the LWC jest implementation does not find any of my UI components. And there are two reasons. First, I didn't provide mocks, and secondly, I didn't configure jest. So let me show you how you would do that in real life. You can see here I have a folder jest mocks, so let me zoom in. And jest mocks has a UI namespace and again all those components. Well, the important part is now they are components that I have to build in my own application because I have to mock them out. This is pretty much the paradigm that we want to teach you as a developer, that you should not test the real implementation of other components that you consume. No, if you want to just test them and you wouldn't have to test their functionality, but you want to test them as part of the application, you will have to build the mocks. So for example, the input field, just give a simple example on how that would look like. You would just bring together a template. You don't have to put anything of your markup because again, you would not have to reach or should not reach into the DOM of the component that you consume. And the JavaScript file actually only needs all those public properties that you want to expose. So if you're not testing that the label is properly set, then you wouldn't have to, right? And this is all basic just functionality. You would just have to stub everything out. One thing that I want to call out is not in all cases it is sufficient that you would only have the templates. If you use slots somewhere in your components, you would also have to mock them if you make use of them. Right? So this is something that I want to call out: public properties in the JavaScript file and slots within the markup files. Now, this is step number one. Step number two, let me quickly go down to my jest config. Step number two is actually to tell jest, and I'm just copying that over because again, I'm lazy, is to tell jest where to find these mocks. Okay, and jest has a standard capability, which is module name mapper. And what I'm basically telling jest is now everything that has a UI namespace, and you can't find it with standard resolution, you will find it in the root directory jest mocks and then namespace. So I'm going to save this. I'm again running my unit tests. Should just hopefully take a couple of seconds this time because it's just a second run. Jest is known to warm up with every run, so that's actually good. And we should not see any failures here in a couple of seconds. There we go. Everything passes how it should be with a proper project. And this is now on how you can use third-party components within your own LWC projects. Now, let me quickly go up to Chrome because I want to call out one thing. If you haven't seen that site, you should all look at that. It's rfcs.lwc.dev, and it shows you all the RFCs that are currently in progress or have been completed on Lightning Web Components on how the framework evolves. And when we go to the module resolution implementation, you see really cool stuff actually, right? I'm not going down to the different algorithms. Diego, he went through all of that. It's a lot. But what is really fun and important is you can see on how you would have to configure your projects, right? Even down to if you have UI components that have similar names but live in different projects, you can map that. Or if you have a very different folder structure. You can configure that using the modules array within LWC dev, right? So again, this site for rfcs.lwc dev is super exciting, super important, because they can see on how the framework evolves. That's it. If you want to experience that in real life, I can highly recommend you that you go to github.com/threaded-apps. This is where all the sample apps from the Salesforce Developer Evangelism team live. And one of them is LWC Recipes OSS, which already includes, as you can see with this nice emoji commit, the new module resolution. So you can play around with it as of today. That's it so far. I wish you a real happy Thursday and hope to see you soon here again at CodeLive. See you soon. Bye-bye.